Ever heard a story so wild it feels like it's ripped from a movie script?
Oh, I know those kinds of stories.
We're diving into one today. The case of Kenyel Brown, a man suspected of multiple murders in Detroit. But get this, he was also working as a police informant.
Yeah, a web of contradictions for sure. The more we dig into Kenyel Brown's story, the more questions pop up.
So let's get this story straight from the start. Where did it all begin for Brown? Like, what was his early life like?
He was born in '79 in River Rouge, Michigan.
Mhm.
Actually had what seemed like a good start. Excelled as a high school basketball player,
Hmm, athletic. Seems promising.
Right. But things took a turn. He struggled with drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, his path definitely went in a darker direction.
So when was his first encounter with the law? When did things really go south?
His first documented run-in was back in '97, assault charge.
That's 97? Okay.
Then more followed, sadly. Weapons charges, drug possession, a whole string of offenses. You can really see the pattern of escalating criminal activity.
So this is painting a pretty clear picture of a life of crime. But then you mentioned this other side, the police informant part. How do those two things even exist together?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. It's not every day you find someone so deep in criminal activity,
Really?
also feeding info to the police.
So how did that even happen? Did they pressure him into it, or was it more of a calculated move on his part?
Seems like at first it was his way to get charges reduced, cut a deal. But it evolved. He ended up becoming a bigger player as an informant, even worked for the ATF and the FBI. Can you believe that?
The ATF and FBI. Wow. They must have thought he was valuable, right? But you said he was a repeat offender? So he was still breaking the law.
Oh, absolutely. He kept violating parole even while he was working with them. We're talking drunk driving, missed drug treatment, even more weapons charges.
He was playing both sides. Do we know if being an informant helped him? Like, did he get off easy because of it?
Tough to say definitively,
Hmm.
but there are definitely signs that, yeah, his cooperation got him some leniency.
This brings up so many questions about informants, especially ones like Brown, who had, such a long rap sheet. Did the system fail here?
That's the million-dollar question. It's complicated, no easy answers. Informants can be a good tool for investigations. They offer insight into the criminal world. But ethically, it gets tricky, especially when they're still committing crimes.
A total gray area. You gotta wonder. Do the benefits really outweigh the risks in cases like this?
Brown's case is like a textbook example of how messy things can get when you rely on people who are still actively part of the criminal world.
Right. Okay, so we've got this career criminal who's also an informant, but this is all before the murders, right? Before he becomes infamous.
Exactly. It's all important context, though, for what happened between December 19 and February 20. That was when the string of brutal murders started, the ones that really shook Detroit.
6 murders in just a few months. That's a serious escalation. Can you walk us um, through what happened?
It starts with Lauren Harrington, shot and killed in River Rouge, December 7th, 2019.
December 9th?
Then, a little over a month later, January 30th, 2020, Brown kills Dorian Patterson and Kimberly Green. This was at a friend's house. They got into an argument, and
Really?
he wounded another person there too, Clifton Smith. He survived, thankfully. And later, he actually helped the police ID Brown.
So we've got a double homicide and attempted murder right there. Were there any others that stand out?
There's February 18th, Brown kills Garcias Woodyard,
Hmm?
attempted robbery in Highland Park. And just 4 days later, he kills Eugene Jennings while trying to steal a car.
It sounds like he was just on a rampage.
Absolutely. It was a time of intense violence for that community, led to a huge manhunt. Multiple agencies were involved, the U.S. Marshal Service, the ATF, everyone was looking for him. And the way it all ends, it's the story in itself.
So we've got this intense manhunt going on. All these agencies are trying to track Brown down. What happens next?
Well, you wouldn't believe it. The lead that broke the case came from the most unexpected place.
Unexpected, huh? What was it, like a psychic vision or something?
Not quite. An adult bookstore.
An adult bookstore.
Yeah, a couple of employees there recognized him. They called the police right away.
Okay, so a random tip leads to the big break. What did the police do?
They jumped into action, cordoned off a bunch of blocks, and started a massive search. Brown knew he was cornered, though, and he tried to get away. Ran through backyards, probably hoping to just disappear.
Like a scene out of a movie, huh? A desperate escape attempt. Did it work?
No, unfortunately. People saw him, alarmed the police, and the chase was on again. He ran out of options, though, and, well, he made a tragic choice.
What happened?
He shot himself. during the standoff.
Wow, that's heavy.
They took him to the hospital, but he died a few days later, February 28th, 2020.
So that's the end of Kenyel Brown, but the story doesn't really end there, does it?
Right. The questions, those are still out there. Was he this cold-blooded killer who just gamed the system, or was he a product of that system? His story is a real. I don't know, it makes you think.
Yeah, definitely. You've got these horrific acts, but then you see his life, the addiction, the prison time, the ethical issues with how they used him as an informant. It's hard to separate it all.
It's all connected, right? To really get it, we have to look at Brown's actions, but within the context of his whole life.
So when we look at it like that, what stands out?
Well, like you said, the addiction, the fact he kept ending up back in prison. And then, how ethical was it for them to use him as an informant, knowing his history? These are all pieces of the puzzle. It's not about saying he was good or bad. It's about trying to understand how all these things came together, how his choices and how the system, how they maybe both contributed to this tragedy.
That's a good point. This isn't just about Brown, it's about what his story tells us about the whole system. What are some of the takeaways here for people listening? What should they be thinking about?
I think the big one is, behind every case, every headline, there's a whole human story. It's complicated usually, there's good and bad, and things aren't always clear-cut. And to really understand it, we have to acknowledge that.
So it's not just judging Brown, it's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. This whole case exposes a lot about how complicated the justice system is.
Yeah.
It shows the gray areas, and it forces us to ask these tough questions about accountability, about rehabilitation, about what justice actually means. This is a conversation everyone needs to be part of.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What should our listeners be taking away from this whole deep dive into Kenyel Brown?
Well, we've laid out the facts, the timeline, the context. Now it's up to you, the listener, to take it from there. Think about it all. What choices did Brown make? What were the consequences? How does it all fit into the larger story of how our criminal justice system works?
It's a powerful reminder that our choices matter. They affect us and the people around us. Brown's story, it's a lot to process, brings up a lot of emotion.
Absolutely. It challenges our assumptions, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths. And hopefully, it makes us think critically about the systems that are all around us.
This deep dive wasn't just about presenting facts, it was about getting people talking, right?
Right. And we hope you keep the conversation going. Talk about it with others. Think about your own perspectives. Really dig into these issues we brought up. That's how knowledge grows.
So what are your thoughts? Did this case raise any questions for you? What are the big things you're taking away from it?
Always more to learn, always more to discuss.
There's always another layer, isn't there?
Speaking of, there's one more piece of Brown's story we need to look at. It adds a whole other dimension to the whole, the whole moral grayness of it all.
Okay, I'm listening. What is it?
Remember that very first assault charge back in '97? The one that landed Brown in jail for the first time?
Yeah, it felt like the start of everything going wrong for him.
Well, it was a car accident. Brown was driving, and his brother, Kareem, was in the passenger seat. And the accident, it left Kareem paralyzed.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
And there's a theory, a possibility, that Brown might have caused the crash on purpose.
You're saying he might have intentionally hurt his own brother?
It's never been proven. But it adds a whole new layer to his story. Was he capable of doing something like that to his own family? Or was it just a horrible accident that stayed with him? We don't really know for sure.
It's like we're only seeing a glimpse of the whole picture. And the truth is, well, it might be impossible to find.
That's how it goes with a lot of these deep dives. We uncover all this complexity, we wrestle with ethical questions, and in the end, we're left with the mystery of it all. The mystery of human nature.
It makes you realize there's always more beneath the surface.
And it's a good reminder that even when things seem straightforward, there are hidden truths and untold stories, different perspectives. We have to be willing to question everything. Brown's story is a perfect example of that.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into the life and death of Kenyel Brown. What a journey.
It really has been. I hope everyone listening found it as thought-provoking as we have. Brown's life, his death, they raise so many questions about choices, about consequences, about the way our systems work,
Yeah.
and about how we think about justice.
It's a reminder that the search for justice isn't always easy or clear. And even when things end tragically, we should still try to understand. Try to have empathy.
What will you do with all this? We talk about it, debate it, use it to start conversations about these important topics. I hope so.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time, keep those minds working, keep asking questions, Keep searching for the truth.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How one case, one person can be so complicated.
Yeah. It shows you we only get a glimpse,
Ah,
the tip of the iceberg. Especially with someone like Brown, living in both worlds,
mm.
criminal and informant.
Makes you question everything. And it definitely shows things aren't simple. Not black and white, that's for sure.
Exactly. Brown's case. It's the perfect example. You can't just slap a label on him, good or bad. It's all tangled up, his actions, the things that happen in his life.
Like a puzzle with pieces missing. We may never know the whole story.
And maybe that's part of the point. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about looking closer, seeing the details, the things we don't know,
Hmm.
and realizing how complicated people are.
And it shows that our justice system, the one that's supposed to be fair and keep us safe, it can be manipulated. It has weaknesses. Brown's case definitely exposed some of those.
Oh, for sure. Using informants.
Yeah.
It's like walking a tightrope, ethically.
Mhm.
You want the information they have, but you could be letting them get away with things. It's tough. When do the ends justify the means? There's no easy answer.
This whole deep dive has really made me think about the systems we have, the people caught up in them. It's a reminder that justice, it's not always a simple thing.
It's messy, full of compromises, hard decisions. And we'll probably never know everything about why Brown did what he did or how much it all really affected things. But his story, it's a warning.
A warning to look deeper. Don't take things at face value. Truth, justice, people. It's all complicated.
And we have to approach it all with open minds, Be curious, be willing to challenge what we think we know.
So as we wrap this up, what are some key things you want our listeners to remember? What should they take away from all this?
I hope they see just how complex the criminal justice system is, how using informants comes with big ethical questions, and how one person's actions can have a ripple effect, a lasting impact. But more than anything, I hope it makes them want to learn more, to keep asking questions, to look for a deeper understanding of the world.
This has been quite a journey, full of surprises and things that make you stop and think. And even though we might never truly understand Kenyel Brown, his story will stick with us.
It shows how important it is to think critically, to have empathy, to never stop learning. And it proves that even the most confusing cases can teach us something about ourselves and about the world we live in.
Thank you for taking us on this deep dive, for helping us make sense of it all.
It's been my pleasure. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep the conversation going. And until next time, keep searching for the truth.
Couldn't have said it better myself. See you on our next deep dive.